Chapter 1. The Spark of Betrayal. Elena had always been the picture of grace and charm. To the outside world, she and her husband Daniel were the perfect couple. They had met in college, married young, and built a life that many envied. Their home was beautiful, their careers thriving, and they had the kind of love story that seemed destined for happy endings. Yet, for all their outward success, Elena began to feel something was missing. A fire that once burned brightly between them was now a faint glow. It had been a slow burn, a gradual shift she hadn't even realized was happening until it was too late. Daniel was always busy. Long hours at the office, constant work trips, and weekend meetings with clients. At first, Elena had been understanding, keeping herself busy with her own work, social events, and volunteer work. But over time, she started to feel more like a shadow of herself, growing more distant and lonely with each passing day. And then came Ryan. He was a new colleague at the art gallery where Elena worked part-time. Dark, brooding eyes, tousled hair, and a charm that seemed effortless. At first, their interactions were nothing more than casual exchanges about exhibitions and art trends. But soon, their conversations shifted to something more personal. Elena found herself drawn to Ryan's energy. He seemed to understand her in ways Daniel no longer did. He listened with intent, laughed at her jokes, and made her feel alive again. One evening, after an exhibition opening, Ryan invited her to a nearby cafe. They talked long after the others had left, the city lights flickering outside the window as they shared stories of their pasts, their dreams, and the things they wished for. Elena hadn't realized it then, but that was the moment when she began to cross a line she had once thought unthinkable. The next few weeks blurred together, with Elena and Ryan's relationship growing more intense, more intimate. It wasn't just the emotional connection anymore. It was the chemistry between them, the magnetic pull that Elena couldn't resist. She tried to justify it in her mind, convincing herself it was harmless, a fleeting escape from the monotony of her marriage. But deep down she knew the truth. This wasn't harmless. She was betraying Daniel. And yet, when Ryan kissed her that first time, on the rooftop of a downtown building, with the city sprawled out beneath them, Elena felt alive in a way she hadn't in years. It was a moment of passion, of surrender to something forbidden. She hadn't planned for it, but she couldn't deny the excitement that pulsed through her veins. The next morning, Elena woke up in her bed alone. She stared at the ceiling, the weight of what had happened settling in. Guilt gnawed at her, but there was also an undeniable thrill, an adrenaline rush that kept her heart racing. She tried to push the thoughts of Ryan away, tried to focus on Daniel, but each moment with him felt increasingly distant. The spark was gone, and with it, Elena's resolve. That evening, when Daniel came home from work, he kissed her on the cheek and asked about her day. She responded absent-mindedly, the guilt still pressing down on her chest. But Daniel didn't notice. He was too busy, too consumed by his own world to realize the subtle shift in her demeanor. The distance between them was growing, but Elena had already made her choice. She would continue seeing Ryan. Little did she know, Daniel was about to find out. And when he did, everything would change. Chapter 2. The Discovery. The first signs were small, insignificant perhaps to anyone else. Daniel noticed Elena's phone constantly buzzing, the screen lighting up with messages at odd hours. She would quickly pick it up, glance at it, and then lock it with a flick of her thumb. At first he shrugged it off. She was busy after all. Maybe she was texting friends or handling work-related matters. But over time, the pattern started to gnaw at him, a quiet suspicion creeping into his mind. One evening, Daniel came home later than usual, tired from a long day of meetings and deadlines. Elena had already prepared dinner, a nice gesture that Daniel used to appreciate more than he did now. They sat at the table, exchanging polite conversation. Elena's smile was more forced than usual, and her eyes darted nervously to her phone every few minutes. The dinner was barely over when Elena excused herself to answer a work call in the other room. Daniel, his curiosity piqued, decided to clear the table and make himself a drink. As he passed through their living room, His eyes fell on Elena's phone, carelessly left on the couch. The screen was unlocked. Without thinking, he picked it up, feeling a strange mixture of guilt and anticipation. He knew it wasn't right. He trusted her, and invading her privacy felt like a betrayal in itself. But the thought of those secretive glances at her phone, the way she guarded it from him, overpowered his better judgment. His hands trembled slightly as he tapped on the screen to open the messages. His heart sank as he read the first few texts, casual at first but quickly escalating in tone. Playful remarks, inside jokes, and then something that hit him like a punch to the gut. "Ryan, I can't wait to see you again tonight. It's been too long. You still make me feel the way you always did." The blood drained from Daniel's face as his mind raced. He scrolled further. More messages, more intimate conversations, each one more personal than the last. It was impossible to ignore what was happening. The messages were undeniable. Elena had been cheating on him. For a moment, everything around him seemed to blur. He felt a wave of nausea wash over him as anger swirled within his chest. He hadn't been blind to their growing distance, but this was a betrayal on a level he hadn't prepared for. The trust he had in her in their marriage crumbled before his eyes, and in its place was a bitter, raw rage. He put the phone down carefully, trying to steady his breath. His mind was racing, conflicting emotions overwhelming him. What should he do? Should he confront her now? Should he wait until she came back into the room? No, that would be too easy. He wanted her to feel the weight of what she had done. He wanted her to understand the consequences of her actions in a way that would make her think twice about ever doing something like this again. But what Daniel didn't yet know was that revenge, when driven by raw emotion, could sometimes spiral out of control. As Elena returned to the living room, Daniel looked at her with a coldness she hadn't seen before. She smiled, ready to explain the call, but the look in his eyes stopped her. "You've been busy," Daniel said quietly. His voice laced with a calm that betrayed the storm brewing inside him. "With Ryan, I mean." Lena froze. Her blood ran cold, and the color drained from her face. She had always known that one day her secret would come to light, but she had never imagined it would happen like this. So suddenly, so decisively. "Daniel, I can explain," she stammered, her voice trembling. But he wasn't interested in her explanations. "Not anymore." "I don't think you can," he replied. His tone so flat it sent chills down her spine. Chapter 3. The confrontation. The room felt suffocating. Elena stood there, frozen, as Daniel's words hung heavy between them, the tension sharp enough to cut through the air. Her heart raced, a mix of fear, guilt, and something darker. She opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. What could she say? How could she explain this mess? She had already crossed the line, and now there was no way to take it back. Daniel's eyes were cold, harder than she'd ever seen them. This wasn't the man she had married. The anger was controlled, but it was palpable, and Elena could sense that his restraint was only making him more dangerous. He was holding back, but not for long. "Do you want to tell me why?" Daniel asked, his voice eerily calm. "Why you've been texting him, meeting him behind my back?" Elena swallowed, her throat dry. "Daniel, I don't know. Just happened. I didn't mean for it to." "Don't," he cut her off sharply. "Don't give me the 'it just happened' excuse. You made a choice, Elena. And you chose him. Not me." Her knees weakened as the weight of his words pressed down on her. She had known this was coming, but hearing it from him, hearing the finality in his voice, felt like a punch to the gut. The guilt surged again, but it was drowned out by the creeping dread of what Daniel might do next. "How long, Elena?" Daniel asked, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Her mind raced, the lie she had been holding on to, the justification she had made in her own mind, slipping away as he pressed her. She could feel the walls closing in. There was no way out of this. No excuse that would undo what she had done. Finally she spoke, her voice barely audible. 6 months. 6 months of lies, of stolen moments, of living in two separate worlds. The weight of it all felt suffocating. Daniel stood motionless, his expression unreadable, but his jaw was clenched tightly. Elena could feel the storm brewing inside him, and it terrified her. She thought she might break under the intensity of it, but Daniel spoke again, his words ice cold. "You know, I've been working late, thinking I'm doing everything I can to make this marriage work. And you?" He took a deep breath, shaking his head. "You've been with him, sneaking around, lying to my face. And you think that's something I can just forgive?" "Daniel, I'm so sorry," she pleaded, stepping toward him. "Please, I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't mean for it to go this far." But Daniel wasn't listening. He was already looking past her, his thoughts clearly elsewhere, a plan already beginning to form in his mind. He had been hurt, betrayed, and in his pain he saw an opportunity not for forgiveness, but for justice. "I'm done, Elena. You don't get to keep lying to me. And you don't get to walk away from this scot-free." His voice was low, but there was a cold finality in it now. Elena's stomach dropped. "What are you saying? What are you going to do?" Daniel didn't answer immediately. He was already turning, heading toward their bedroom. He didn't even look back as he spoke over his shoulder. "You'll find out soon enough." Elena stood rooted to the spot, her heart pounding in her chest. She wanted to follow him, to stop him, but something in the way he carried himself, the confidence, the utter certainty in his step, told her that there was no stopping him now. She was on the verge of begging him to understand, to remember the good times, but deep down she knew it was too late. The trust was broken, and whatever came next would be a reflection of the hurt she had caused. Daniel walked into their bedroom, and Elena heard the faint sound of him opening a drawer, then the unmistakable click of something heavy being placed on the bed. Her blood ran cold. What was he doing? She couldn't move. Fear rooted her in place. A moment later, Daniel reappeared, holding something in his hand. Elena's breath caught in her throat. It was his phone, the one she had always known was his lifeline to everything in his professional world. But now it was in his hand, and she could see the determination in his eyes. She had never seen him so resolved. "Ryan's going to get a call," Daniel said, the corner of his lips twitching. "And then you'll see what it feels like to be on the other side of betrayal." Chapter 4: The Phone Call. Elena felt the coldness in her veins. Her mind raced as Daniel stood there, his grip tight around his phone. She wanted to say something to stop him, but the words caught in her throat. The reality of what was happening hit her all at once. This wasn't just a confrontation. This was the beginning of something irreversible. Daniel wasn't just angry. He was calculating, cold, and had a plan of his own. She watched him press a few buttons on his phone. His eyes still locked on her, the tension between them palpable. He seemed so calm, like he had already accepted what he was about to do, as if he had been waiting for this moment for far longer than she had ever realized. "Daniel, please," Elena whispered, desperation creeping into her voice. "Don't do this. Please don't involve him." But Daniel didn't respond. His eyes remained cold, as if she were a distant memory he was already willing to let go of. With a few more taps, he held the phone to his ear. Elena could only watch in horror, her breath shallow as the seconds ticked by. Each one felt like an eternity. The ringing stopped, and then the low voice of Ryan came through the phone, sounding casual, unaware of the storm he was about to walk into. "Hello." Daniel's voice was sharp, his tone steady but dangerous. "Ryan. This is Daniel." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Elena's heart skipped a beat, and she saw Ryan's name flash across Daniel's screen. She wanted to reach out, to stop him from doing something that might destroy everything completely, but the words died in her throat. "Daniel. What's this about?" Ryan finally responded, his voice slightly confused but still confident. Elena could hear the hint of surprise but also an edge of curiosity. "Don't act like you don't know, Ryan," Daniel continued, his voice ice cold. I know everything. Every text. Every secret meeting. I know you've been sleeping with my wife. There was a long, uncomfortable silence. Elena could practically feel the shift in Ryan's demeanor on the other side of the line. She could hear the hitch in his breath, the tension creeping into his voice. Wait, what? Ryan's voice faltered, no longer the confident tone she had grown used to. You've got to be kidding. How did you? I found the messages, Daniel interrupted, his voice growing even colder. I know exactly what's been going on behind my back. You think I didn't notice the late-night calls, the strange texts, the lies? You and Elena have been playing me for a fool. Elena could feel the heat rush to her face, the overwhelming shame and guilt flooding through her. She closed her eyes, unable to bear hearing her secrets exposed so openly. She had thought she could keep them hidden, but now the truth was out, and there was no way to undo the damage. Ryan's voice came through again, this time weaker, more defensive. I didn't mean to hurt you, man. It wasn't like that. Elena and I. Shut up, Daniel snapped, cutting him off. You don't get to make excuses. I don't care what your reasons were. You slept with my wife. You betrayed me. And now, you're going to feel the consequences. Elena could feel the anger rising in her throat, like a pressure building to an unbearable point. Daniel, please don't, she tried to say, but he ignored her completely. Tell me something, Ryan, Daniel continued, his voice dripping with malice. Do you think she's worth it? The lies. The drama. Because I'm going to make sure you regret this. Elena's hands shook as she clutched the edge of the couch. Her heart raced, the panic taking over as she imagined what Daniel might do next. She had seen him angry before, but this was something else. This was calculated revenge. Daniel, please, she said again, more urgently now. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Don't make it worse. But it was too late. The decision had already been made. On the other end of the line, Ryan was trying to salvage the situation, but Daniel wasn't listening anymore. Elena could hear the panic in Ryan's voice as he stammered a response, trying to explain, but Daniel had already reached the tipping point. I'll be there soon, Daniel said coldly, before hanging up the phone with a sharp click. Elena felt her entire world start to unravel as Daniel set the phone down on the coffee table. He turned to face her, his expression a mask of fury and disgust. You don't get to walk away from this, Elena, he said quietly, his voice deadly calm. You and Ryan both need to understand the cost of betrayal. The finality of his words hit Elena like a punch to the stomach. She had crossed a line, and now she was going to face the consequences. Daniel didn't wait for her to respond. Without another word, he turned and walked out the door, leaving Elena alone in the silence of their home, shattered, guilt-ridden, and wondering what kind of man her husband had become. Chapter 5. The plan unfolds. Elena sat motionless, the sound of Daniel's footsteps echoing in her ears as he left the house. Her mind was a whirlwind of panic, guilt, and confusion. She had wanted to believe that Daniel would never actually take things to this extreme, that he would hear her out, that they could somehow salvage their marriage. But now, as the door clicked shut behind him, she realized that this was no longer about reconciliation. This was about revenge. She stood up, pacing the room, unable to shake the feeling that she was losing everything. Her phone lay on the coffee table, but she didn't want to touch it. It felt like an extension of her guilt, the constant reminder of the lies she had told. She had betrayed the one person she had sworn to love and honor, and now Daniel was going to make her pay. Her thoughts drifted to Ryan, and she felt a sharp pang of regret. What had she done? She had let herself be swept away by the excitement, by the thrill of something new, something that made her feel alive again. But in doing so, she had lost everything that had mattered. The front door opened with a quiet creak. Elena's heart leaped into her throat. She quickly wiped away the tears she hadn't realized had formed, hoping that Daniel hadn't seen her vulnerable state. She turned to face him, but he wasn't alone. A tall, broad-shouldered man stood in the doorway with him, someone Elena didn't recognize. Her breath caught in her throat as Daniel motioned for the man to step inside. "Who is this?" Elena asked, her voice shaking with confusion. "This is my friend Tom," Daniel replied coolly, closing the door behind them. He didn't look at her as he spoke. His eyes fixed on Tom, who stepped forward with a calm demeanor. Tom nodded in her direction. "Nice to meet you, Elena," he said, his voice low and steady. There was something about him, something calculating in his eyes, that immediately made her feel uneasy. "I didn't know you had friends like this," Elena replied, trying to keep her voice steady, though every fiber of her being was telling her to run. Daniel ignored her comment and made his way to the living room. "Elena, you've put me in a difficult position," he said, his voice low and controlled. "But now, I think it's time you learned what happens when you betray someone who's given you everything." Elena's heart raced, and she took a step back, suddenly feeling like a cornered animal. "What are you going to do?" she asked, her voice trembling, though she tried to mask the fear. Daniel turned to her with a cold, emotionless expression. "You wanted excitement, Elena. You wanted to feel alive again. Well, now you're going to see how far that can go." She tried to protest, to plead with him, but the words wouldn't come. She wanted to beg him to stop, to remind him of all the years they had spent together, of the love they had once shared. But she knew deep down that it wouldn't matter. She had crossed a line, and now there was no turning back. "Tom," Daniel said, turning to the man who had silently stood behind him, "I think it's time we take a little trip. Show Elena how things can change when she thinks no one's looking." Elena's stomach twisted in fear. "What are you talking about? What are you going to do with me?" But Daniel didn't answer. Instead, he motioned for Tom to follow him as they both moved toward the door. "No!" Elena cried, her voice panicked. She rushed forward, grabbing Daniel's arm. "Please don't do this. You're angry, I understand. But you're only going to hurt yourself too if you—" "Enough!" Daniel cut her off harshly. He pulled his arm out of her grasp, his face like stone. "I'm done with the lies, Elena. You had your chance to come clean. Now it's my turn." With that, he turned and walked out the door, Tom following closely behind him. Elena stood frozen, her mind spinning in terror. She wanted to run after them, to stop whatever it was they had planned, but her legs felt like they had turned to lead. She had never seen Daniel like this, so detached, so cold. He had always been her anchor, her stability. But now, he was something else. The silence of the house pressed in on her as she stood there, struggling to comprehend what was happening. Her phone buzzed suddenly, breaking her out of her daze. She picked it up, her hands shaking as she saw the notification on the screen. It was a message from Ryan. "Ryan. Elena, are you okay? I've been trying to reach you. I think we need to talk about what happened. Please call me." Her heart skipped a beat. She didn't know what to do. She had no idea what Daniel was planning or where he was going, but she knew one thing for certain. He wasn't going to forgive her this easily. And now Ryan, the man who had become her escape, was out there, unaware of the chaos that had erupted. She needed to make a choice. And quickly. Chapter 6. The Descent. Elena stood in the middle of the room, her phone clutched tightly in her hand, the message from Ryan staring back at her. Her thoughts collided with each other, her pulse racing. Part of her wanted to reach out to him, to explain everything, to make him understand that she never meant for any of this to happen. But the other part, an overpowering guttural instinct, warned her to stay away from him. She glanced toward the door, anxiety gnawing at her as her thoughts turned back to Daniel. She had never seen him this way before, so distant, so controlled. There was a coldness in his eyes that frightened her more than any of the anger he had shown in the past. What had he planned? What would he do next? The messages between her and Ryan played on a loop in her mind, and she felt a sickening wave of guilt crash over her. She had destroyed something she had once thought was invincible. Daniel had loved her. He had trusted her. And she had thrown that all away for a fleeting connection, a dangerous escape from the discontent she had felt. Now she had to live with the consequences. Her phone buzzed again, pulling her from her thoughts. She hesitated for a moment before reading Ryan's message. Ryan. Elena, I'm coming over. We need to talk. I don't want to lose you. Her stomach twisted. She had no idea what to do. The rational part of her screamed that this wasn't the time to talk to Ryan. She couldn't let herself sink further into the chaos of her decisions. Daniel was already on the warpath, and if Ryan showed up now, the consequences could be catastrophic. But she couldn't stop herself. She quickly typed out a response. Elena. Don't come. Please. It's too dangerous right now. You don't know what's happening. She hit send before she could second-guess herself, but the moment she let go of her phone, her mind spun out of control. She was trapped between two men, each of them holding pieces of her heart, yet both at odds with one another. A knock at the door shattered the stillness of the room. Elena's breath caught in her throat, and for a moment she stood frozen, her hand trembling on the doorknob. Her thoughts collided, the panic building inside her chest. Who was it? Was it Daniel returning with more of his fury? Or was it Ryan, determined to fix things, unaware of the storm Daniel was ready to unleash? The knock came again, louder this time, urgent. Elena took a shaky breath and opened the door, her heart pounding as she tried to steady herself. The person standing there, however, was neither Ryan nor Daniel. It was Tom. His tall frame filled the doorway, and his dark eyes surveyed her with an unreadable expression. He didn't smile, nor did he speak at first. There was something unsettling in his stillness, a kind of watchfulness that made Elena's skin crawl. Daniel told me to check on you, Tom said quietly, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. He looked around, his eyes scanning the room as if searching for something, or someone, he couldn't quite find. Elena backed away instinctively, her pulse racing. Why are you here? She demanded, her voice a little too sharp. Tom's lips curled into a faint smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. Just making sure you're comfortable, he said in a tone that sounded almost too casual, too rehearsed. Elena's instincts screamed at her to run, but she held her ground, trying to muster some semblance of control. I don't need your help, she snapped. I'm fine. You can leave now. Tom raised an eyebrow, unfazed. Daniel told me not to leave until you were ready to face what's coming. He paused, his eyes narrowing. He's doing what he has to do, Elena. And you're going to have to live with it. Her breath hitched as his words landed with an icy finality. The weight of Daniel's intentions hit her all at once. He wasn't just angry. He was making sure she understood what her actions had cost. And Tom. He was the messenger, the enforcer of whatever Daniel had planned. Elena turned away, not wanting to show how much his words affected her, but Tom wasn't done. He took a step forward, his presence looming behind her like a dark cloud. You're not going to get out of this, Tom continued, his voice low and calm. Daniel's already made up his mind. And if you try to run, well, that won't end well for you, will it? Elena spun around, her eyes wide with fear. What does that mean? What are you going to do? Tom shrugged nonchalantly. All I know is that Daniel doesn't want to be played. And he's already told me that no one is going to stop him from getting what he wants. For the first time since he'd entered the house, Elena felt a bead of sweat form on her forehead. This was real. Daniel wasn't just going to confront her. He wasn't just angry. He was doing something calculated, something that would leave a mark on everyone involved. And now she was trapped, completely powerless to stop it. Her phone buzzed again, but this time Elena didn't check it. She knew that whatever Ryan wanted to say, it would be too late to change anything. Daniel was already drawing the lines in the sand, and there was no way she could erase what had been done. Chapter 7: The Game. Elena could feel the pressure closing in around her. Tom's presence was like a weight pressing down on her chest, his eyes tracking her every move with an unnerving calmness. The walls of the house suddenly felt smaller, as if the entire room was collapsing in on her. She was running out of time, out of options, and she didn't know how to stop what was happening. Tom stood there, silently watching her, as if waiting for her to break, to give him a reason to take things further. Elena's mind raced, scrambling to think of some way out. But there was no escape. Daniel had already made his decision, and Tom was here to enforce it. "Why are you doing this?" Elena finally asked, her voice shaking but determined. "What do you want from me?" Tom's lips curled into a smirk. "What I want doesn't really matter," he said. "It's what Daniel wants that matters. And right now, he wants you to understand what happens when you betray him." Her heart pounded in her chest as she glanced toward the door, as if there was any chance she could just run away, but she knew it was pointless. Tom's gaze followed her movements, and she could see the cold amusement flicker in his eyes. He had seen this kind of desperation before. She was just another part of Daniel's plan, a pawn in a game that she hadn't realized was being played until it was too late. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen," Elena said, her voice growing weaker, her resolve starting to crack. "I made a mistake. Huge mistake. But please tell Daniel I'll make it right. I'll fix this." Tom let out a low chuckle, shaking his head. "You think you can fix this? After everything that's happened? Daniel doesn't want you to fix it. He wants you to understand the cost of your actions. And he wants you to feel what it's like to lose everything." His voice lowered, becoming darker. "You made him feel like he didn't matter. And now you'll see how that feels." Elena's breath hitched. Her world had been turned upside down in a matter of days, and every moment of this felt like a dream, a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. She had no idea where Daniel had gone or what he had planned, but she knew now that there was no going back. She had taken the first step down this road, and Daniel had already gone too far to turn around. "Daniel's not the man you think he is," Tom continued, his voice like ice. "He's not some weak fool who'll just forgive you and move on. He's done with you. This is about teaching you a lesson you won't forget." Her mind screamed at her to do something, anything. To fight back, to run, to scream for help. But the fear, the overwhelming sense of helplessness paralyzed her. She wanted to argue to change his mind, but she knew it was pointless. Daniel wasn't the same man anymore. And neither was she. She had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed, and now, the consequences were unfolding in front of her. Just as Elena opened her mouth to say something, her phone buzzed again. This time she didn't hesitate. She snatched it up, desperate for any kind of contact that might pull her from the edge. It was a message from Ryan. "Ryan. Elena, please. I'm outside. I'm not leaving until I talk to you." Her heart skipped a beat. Ryan was here. She could barely believe it. A rush of conflicting emotions flooded her chest. Relief, fear, hope. But she quickly pushed it all aside. If Ryan was here, Daniel would know. And if Daniel knew, the stakes would rise even higher. Tom seemed to notice her shift in attention, and a dark smile spread across his face. "Is that Ryan?" he asked casually, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "I wouldn't answer if I were you. Daniel's got something in mind for him too." Elena's hand trembled as she read the message again, her mind racing. Ryan had come to confront her, to try and fix things. But she knew now that this wasn't just about her and Ryan anymore. It was about Daniel's wrath, his need for control. And Ryan, innocent, clueless Ryan, was just another piece in Daniel's revenge. "No," Elena muttered to herself, her pulse quickening. She couldn't let Ryan get dragged into this. She couldn't let him suffer for her mistakes. She had to protect him, even if it meant losing everything. She quickly typed a response, her fingers trembling. "Elena, you need to leave. Daniel's not who you think he is. Just go." She hit send, but before she could do anything else, Tom stepped closer, his shadow looming over her. "You think you can just end this? You think you can get away with running off with him?" He grabbed her arm, his grip tight enough to bruise. "You can't hide from what you've done, Elena. Daniel will make sure of that." Elena flinched, trying to pull away, but Tom's hold was unyielding. The door was just a few steps away, but she knew it was useless. No matter what she did, no matter how much she tried to control the situation, the game had already started, and Daniel was the one calling the shots. "Please," Elena begged, her voice breaking. "Just tell Daniel I'm sorry. I'll make it right. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this." Tom's smile faded, and his eyes narrowed as he leaned in closer. "It's too late for that, Elena. The game is over, and you're not the one who gets to decide how it ends." Chapter 8. The Confrontation. Elena's heart was pounding as she stood in the living room, Tom's grip still firm on her arm. His words echoed in her mind, the cold reality of what was happening settling over her like a heavy fog. There was no way out. No more chances. No more second chances. Everything she had done, every choice, every lie, had led her to this moment. And now, Daniel was making sure she understood the consequences. She could see it in Tom's eyes, the unwavering loyalty to his friend, the man who had been hurt beyond repair. Daniel was no longer the man who had loved her. He was someone else entirely. And Tom was here to make sure she paid. The doorbell rang, cutting through the thick silence of the room. Elena froze, the blood draining from her face. She knew who it was. She didn't even have to check the clock to know that it was Ryan, oblivious to the storm he was about to walk into. Tom didn't move, but his gaze flickered toward the door with a dangerous glint. "Your little knight in shining armor," he said, his voice dripping with derision. "He's not going to like what he finds on the other side." Elena swallowed hard, the pressure mounting in her chest. She couldn't let this happen. She couldn't let Ryan walk into this hell. If Daniel was already this far gone, there was no telling how far he would go. She had to stop this before it escalated. "I'll handle it," she said, her voice shaky but determined. She jerked her arm free from Tom's grip, her mind racing. "Just, please, don't do anything. I'll talk to him. I'll make him understand." Tom raised an eyebrow, almost amused by her defiance. "You think Daniel cares about what you say? He's done with explanations, Elena. He's done with you. And Ryan. He's a casualty of your choices. Just like you." But Elena wasn't listening anymore. She had already started toward the door, her heart hammering in her chest. She had to stop Ryan before he came face to face with the fury Daniel had unleashed. If she didn't, everything would be destroyed. All of it. When she reached the door, she hesitated for just a moment. She could hear the faint rustle of movement behind her, Tom watching her every move. With a deep breath, she opened the door. Ryan stood there, a look of concern on his face, his hand still hovering over the doorbell. His eyes locked onto hers, and for a moment, Elena felt a wave of relief. He was here. He had come to fix things. But the warmth of his gaze quickly shifted into confusion as he saw the tension in her face. "Elena," Ryan said softly, his brow furrowing. "What's going on? I got your message. You told me not to come, but I couldn't just leave things like this." "Ryan, you shouldn't have come," Elena said quickly, her voice trembling. "You don't know what you're walking into. Please, you need to go." This isn't what you think." Ryan looked at her, clearly torn. "I don't care what's going on. I just need to talk to you to fix this. To fix us." She shook her head, the weight of her decisions crushing her. "There's nothing to fix," she said quietly. "I've already ruined everything. And if you stay, it'll only make things worse. Please, Ryan. Go." He hesitated, his eyes searching hers, trying to make sense of what she was saying. But before he could respond, a shadow passed over them. Tom appeared in the doorway, stepping out from behind Elena, his presence looming over them. "You heard her, Ryan," he said in a low, mocking voice. "She doesn't want you here." Ryan's eyes flicked toward Tom, his confusion deepening. "Who the hell are you?" he demanded, his voice edging with suspicion. "What's going on here, Elena?" Tom's smirk widened as he casually leaned against the doorframe. I'm just someone who knows how things are about to go down. And trust me, Ryan, you're not going to like it. He looked past Ryan as if speaking directly to Daniel, though the man himself wasn't there. You're a pawn in a game you don't even understand. Elena stepped forward, desperation in her eyes. Ryan, please. But before she could say another word, the unmistakable sound of a car engine roared in the driveway. Elena's heart sank. She knew it was him. Daniel. Ryan turned around, his gaze sharpening. Who's that? Elena didn't answer. Instead, she quickly stepped outside, her heart in her throat. Ryan, please, she whispered urgently. Just go. You don't understand, this isn't safe. Daniel's not who you think he is. I don't want you involved in this. But before Ryan could respond, the front door slammed open behind them, and Daniel stood there, his silhouette dark against the dim light of the hallway. His eyes, cold and unforgiving, locked onto Ryan with a seething intensity. Ryan's body stiffened, and he took a step back, clearly taken aback by Daniel's sudden appearance. What the hell is going on here, Daniel? Ryan demanded, his voice hardening. Elena's been trying to explain herself. You're the one who needs to hear her out. Daniel's lip curled into a half-smile, but there was no warmth in it. Explain herself, he repeated, his voice low and controlled. She's already explained everything, Ryan. She's made her choices. And now it's time for her to face the consequences. Elena's breath caught in her chest, panic rising as Daniel took another step forward, his presence filling the space with a suffocating pressure. She could see the storm brewing in his eyes, the storm she had helped create. Stay out of this, Ryan, Daniel warned, his voice like steel. You have no idea what you're dealing with. Chapter 9, The Breaking Point. The air grew thick with tension as Daniel stepped closer, his eyes never leaving Ryan. Elena's pulse pounded in her ears, her breath shallow as she stood between them, caught in the crossfire of two worlds she had never meant to collide. The nightmare she had tried to prevent was now unfolding, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Ryan, though clearly confused and angered by Daniel's sudden intrusion, stood his ground. I don't know what you think you're doing, Daniel, but this isn't the way to handle things, he said, his voice unwavering, despite the obvious unease in his posture. If Elena's made a mistake, it's between the two of you. Don't drag me into it. Daniel's smile remained cold, but his eyes flickered with something darker. It's too late for that, he said softly. His gaze shifted back to Elena, his expression hardening. You wanted to play with fire, Elena. Well, now you've gotten burned. Elena felt her heart drop at his words. She could see the distance between them widening in that moment, the gulf that had once been filled with love and trust now reduced to a void of anger and betrayal. She had known this was coming, but she had never imagined it would feel like this, so utterly final. You don't get it, do you? Daniel continued, turning his attention back to Ryan. She had everything. She had me. And she threw it all away for you. For a lie. A lie that I was too blind to see. Ryan's face twisted in confusion. I don't know what you're talking about. Elena's not like that. She's not a liar. Elena's chest tightened as she watched them. Ryan didn't understand. He couldn't understand what was happening, what had already happened. Daniel had already made up his mind, and Ryan was just another casualty in this twisted game. I don't care what you think of me, Elena said, her voice cracking as she spoke. But I need you to leave, Ryan. It's over. This isn't what I wanted. I never wanted any of this. Ryan's eyes locked onto hers, hurt flashing across his face. Elena, please. No. She cut him off, her voice breaking as she stepped back. She could feel the walls closing in, the suffocating grip of the situation tightening around her. You don't get it, Ryan. Daniel's right. I've already destroyed everything. And now you need to leave before things get worse. Ryan opened his mouth to argue, but before he could say anything, Daniel spoke again, his voice dripping with contempt. She's right, Daniel said, his tone unrecognizable. "This is over. But it's not just between us anymore, Elena. You made sure of that." A heavy silence fell over the group, and for the first time, Elena noticed the subtle change in Daniel's demeanor. His anger had been sharp, but now there was something colder, something darker. He wasn't just angry anymore. He was calculating. "I gave you everything," Daniel continued, his voice low and steady. "I trusted you, believed in you. And now I'm taking that back." The words hung in the air like a storm cloud, and Elena felt a chill run down her spine. What was he planning? What had he meant by that? She wanted to ask, to beg for answers, but her throat was tight with fear. She had no idea what Daniel was capable of anymore. Ryan seemed to sense the shift in the air too. He took a step back, his eyes flickering between Daniel and Elena, unsure of what to do next. "Elena, I don't understand," he stammered. "Why are you pushing me away? Why are you letting him do this?" Elena's chest ached, but she couldn't bring herself to answer. She couldn't explain it to Ryan. She couldn't make him understand the hell she had already created for herself. The man standing in front of her wasn't the man she had married. He was someone else now. Someone who had been broken, shattered by her betrayal. And he wasn't going to let it go. Tom, who had been lurking in the background, stepped forward at that moment. His voice smooth and calm. "It's not about understanding, Ryan," he said, his words dripping with disdain. "It's about power. It's about control. And Daniel, my friend, has both in spades." Ryan's eyes flashed with defiance, but he didn't take another step forward. He was realizing, just like Elena had, that this wasn't a fight he could win. Not against Daniel. Not in this world of retribution that Elena had dragged them into. Elena turned to look at Ryan, her heart breaking all over again. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I'm so sorry." Ryan's expression softened, but the hurt in his eyes was unmistakable. "I don't understand you, Elena," he said quietly. "I thought we were better than this." And then, without another word, he turned and walked away. Elena stood frozen in the doorway, watching him go. She wanted to run after him, to fix everything, to take back the hurt she had caused. But she knew deep down that it was too late. The damage had been done, and no amount of apologies would ever undo the betrayal she had inflicted on both men. As she closed the door, the reality of what had just happened settled in. Daniel stood there, his expression hard, his presence suffocating. Tom, who had been silent up until this point, exchanged a look with Daniel. It was a look of finality, of inevitability. And then Daniel turned to Elena. "You wanted this, remember," he said, his voice cold. "You wanted things to change. Well, now you get to see how much it costs." Chapter 10, The Final Move. The house felt suffocating, every breath Elena took growing heavier as Daniel's gaze drilled into her. She had never seen him like this. This man before her was no longer the husband she had known, the one who loved her, who would have done anything for her. No, this was a stranger, hardened by betrayal and the wreckage of their once perfect life. And now he was about to make her pay for it. "I gave you everything," Daniel repeated, his voice softer now, but still sharp with bitterness. "And you took it and threw it all away. For him." Elena stood in the middle of the living room, her body trembling, the weight of her guilt anchoring her to the spot. "Daniel," she began, her voice cracking, "I never wanted any of this. I never wanted to hurt you. But I did. And I—" "You did," Daniel cut her off, his words cold and final. "And now you'll understand what happens when you destroy everything we had. Because I won't let you walk away from this. Not after what you did." Elena could feel her knees weaken, but she refused to let herself break down. She couldn't. Not now. Not when she had already lost so much. She had hurt the man she loved, but she had never imagined he could change so completely. She had no idea how far he would go to make her feel the weight of her actions, and that terrified her. "I don't know what you're going to do," Elena said, her voice low, trembling with fear, But please, please don't drag anyone else into this. Don't make things worse. Daniel stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers. Too late for that, Elena. It's already done. The finality in his voice hit her like a wave crashing down on her chest. She had thought she could fix things, that maybe, just maybe, she could salvage some piece of her former life. But Daniel wasn't interested in that anymore. He wasn't interested in forgiveness. Tom, standing behind Daniel, gave a knowing smirk, as if watching a carefully orchestrated plan unfold. Elena couldn't read the expression on his face, but she knew he was a part of all of this. He had always been a shadow lurking behind Daniel, a silent participant in whatever this had become. "You want to fix things?" Daniel asked, his voice dropping to a low whisper. "You want to make it right? I don't think you can. There are things you can never take back, Elena." She could feel herself breaking, the world she had built crumbling around her. Every lie, every kiss, every betrayal came crashing back in vivid flashes. It wasn't just the affair. It was the subtle ways she had undermined their marriage, the ways she had convinced herself she could get away with it. And now here they were, in the ruins of everything they had been. "I'm sorry," she whispered, more to herself than to him. "I'm so sorry. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve it." For a moment there was silence. The weight of her words hung in the air like an unspoken truth. Daniel stood there, eyes hard, but for the briefest second, Elena thought she saw something in them, something almost like regret. But it was gone as quickly as it had appeared. "You want forgiveness," Daniel said, his voice sharp again. "I'm not the one you need to be asking." And that was it. There was no more room for words. No more room for anything other than the inevitable end. Without another word, Daniel turned and walked toward the door. Tom followed him, his steps echoing through the house. Elena stood there, paralyzed, watching as the two of them left. The door closed behind them with a finality that felt like a death sentence. For a moment there was nothing but silence. Then, with a shuddering breath, Elena sank to her knees on the floor. The weight of her mistakes, her choices, came crashing down on her, suffocating her with the realization of what she had lost. The man she had loved, the life they had shared, and Ryan too. He was gone. All of it was gone. As she sat there, the echoes of the past haunting her, she heard the faint sound of a car driving away from the driveway. And in that moment, Elena knew that there was no going back. Her marriage was over. Her future was a broken promise, a shattered dream. The game had been played, and she had lost. And in the stillness of that moment, Elena realized that her punishment wasn't just the anger Daniel had unleashed. It was the knowledge that nothing she did from this point forward could ever bring back what had been lost.